This is our lesson number 16 of the Life in the UK course that we are doing from the study guide 2026 edition. And as you already know that you have to have a Life in the UK test and a B1 test for indefinite leave to remain and British passport applications. This is the brief introduction of the book. This is 2026 edition and the whole course is made from this book. You can stop the video here and then you can have the information about the book here. So we will be now moving on to the course. We will be starting from page number 42. In our last lesson we finished this, and today we would start with the Crimean War. From 1853 to 1856, Britain fought with Turkey and France against Russia in the Crimean War. This is a kind of many countries against Russia. So UK, Turkey and France, these three countries were fighting against Russia in Crimean War. So 1853 to 1856, so this is a 3 years war. It was the first war to be extensively covered by the media through news and stories and photographs. So this is important information. So sometimes you will have in question about which countries fought against Russia in the Crimean War, or when was the Crimean War fought. Okay, the conditions were very poor and many soldiers died from illness. Then caught in the hospital. They caught in the hospital rather than from war wounds. So this is the war in which the infections spread out very quickly and people did not die of bullets, people died of means infections and diseases from the. It doesn't mean that they did not die of bullets. Okay, they did, but many people died because of diseases. Queen Victoria introduced the Victoria Cross medal during this war. It honors the act of valor and by soldiers. Now, Queen Victoria announced that whosoever performs great acts of bravery and courage, they would be given Victoria Cross. Okay, so you will have a question: in which war was Victoria Cross given to soldiers because of the acts of bravery? So it was the Crimean War. So Florence Nightingale, extremely important topic. I tick mark this one. Florence Nightingale was born in Italy to English parents. At the age of 31, she trained as a nurse in Germany. In 1854, she went to Turkey and worked in the military hospitals, treating soldiers who were fighting in the Crimean War. So this is the person who is known for helping soldiers in Crimean War. And she was born to English parents and she was born in Italy. She and her fellow nurses improved the conditions of the hospitals and reduced mortality rate. In 1860, she established the Nightingale Training School for Nurses at St. Thomas's Hospital in London. That's very important. The school was first of its kind and still exists today. So many of the practices of Nightingale use. She's often regarded as the founder of modern nursing. Okay. So she's the founder of modern nursing. Okay, so what happens was that she fought in the she treated soldiers in the Crimean War. She founded the Nightingale Training School for Nurses and St. Thomas Hospital, and she's supposed to be the founder of the nursing. So these are three important questions from this paragraph. Ireland in the 19th century. Conditions in Ireland were not good as the rest of the UK. 2/3 of the population still depended on farming to make their living. Okay, so often on a very small plots of land. Many depended on the potatoes as large part of their diet. Right, in the middle of the century, the potato crop failed and Ireland suffered a famine. 1 million people died from disease and starvation. Another 1.5 million left Ireland. Some immigrated to the United States and others came to England. Okay, so this is something very important. Okay, 1 million people died when the potato crop failed. So sometimes the question is how many people died when the potato crop failed. And sometimes the question is how many people left Ireland during the 19th century. And or sometimes the question is the people who left during the potato crop failure immigrated to which two countries. So then you have answers: United States and England. By 1866 there were large populations of Irish people in cities such as Liverpool, London, and Manchester, and Glasgow. Okay, so as I said before, wherever you have a date, wherever you have names a city, that's the most important thing to remember. The Irish nationalist movement had grown strongly through the 19th century. That's important. Why? Because, as I said, that the condition in Ireland was not very good. The rest of the UK was fine. So Irish people thought that they are deprived, they are not given proper care. So that's why they started a revolt. They were not very happy. So Irish nationalist movement started, which means that we don't want to live with you if you don't care about us. So some, such as the Fenians, favored complete independence. Others, such as John Stuart Parnell, advocated a home rule in which Ireland would remain in the UK but have its own parliament. Okay, so this is important guy. So some people said we need to complete independence, and others said that we can still be in the UK but we will have our own parliament. And the person who supported this was John Stuart Parnell. The right to vote, that's very, very important topic. Okay, as the middle classes in the wealthy industrial towns and cities grew in influence, they began to demand more political power. The Reform Act of 1832 had greatly increased the number of people with the right to vote. So the Reform Act of 1832 said that, okay, now it basically included many more people into the criteria, and many people could vote. The act also abolished old pockets and rotten boroughs, and more parliamentary seats were given to towns and cities. Okay, so the seats mean the representatives of different places in the parliament that grew increased. The number increased. There was a permanent shift of political power from the countryside to the towns. Okay, so now many towns have more seats, so it means that more representatives from those towns and cities could go into the parliament, and then more people could be represented. Voting was still based on ownership of property, but that was one problem. So only those people could vote who had certain amount of property. So this means that the number of working classes were still unable to vote. So people who are working in factories and hospitals, in schools, let's say, and if they did not have any property, they couldn't vote. So the voting was only for the feudals, means the people who own land. A movement began to demand the vote for the working classes and other people without property. Campaigners called Chartists presented the petition in the parliament. Okay, so this is important. So seeing that people can go into the parliament, they can influence the lawmaking process, and they wanted to go into the parliament. So they started campaigning, because a large part of the population was in the working classes. So those people who supported that working classes should have right to vote were known as Chartists. Okay, this is very, very important, because this is about basic human rights. At first they seemed to be unsuccessful, but in 1867 there was another Reform Act. This created many more urban seats in the parliament and reduced the amount of property that the people needed to vote before they could vote. Right. Still, 1867 there was another rule, but let's say, I'm just giving you example. For example, if somebody owns, let's say, 2 houses, they can vote. But this act, 1867 Reform Act, they said, okay, now 2 houses is a bit too much. Whosoever has 1 house, owns 1 house, can vote. But this is just an example. I'm not giving you the correct or exact details of the property so that you can understand things easily. It was about the land and the property. Okay, so these houses, 2 houses, 1 house, this is just an example to make your concepts clear. However, the majority still did not have the right to vote, and women did not have vote at all. Okay. Politicians realized that the increased number of voters meant they needed to persuade people to vote for them, and if they were to show being elected for parliament. Now, because more people could vote, so parliamentarians or the MPs, they knew that they would have to convince people to vote for them. Okay, the political parties began to create organizations to reach out to ordinary people. Universal suffrage, the right of every adult, male and female, to vote, followed in the next century. Okay, so suffrage means everybody should have right to vote, whether female or male. That's also started in common with the rest of the Europe. Women in the 19th century, Britain, had fewer rights than men. Okay, so that's a very important question. Until 1870, when a woman got married, her earnings, property, and money automatically belonged to her husband. Okay, right. So this is about women and their properties going to their husbands until 1870. Acts of Parliament 1870 and 1882 gave wives the right to keep their own earnings and property. Okay, so these two laws made by the Parliament in 1870 and 1882, they said that now if women marry men, their properties will not automatically transfer to men, their husbands. Okay, so they will keep their properties. In the late 19th and the 20th centuries, an increasing number of women campaigned to demonstrate for the greater rights, in particular the right to vote. They formed the women's suffrage movement known as suffragettes. Okay, so with this, women saw that if they are not in the parliament, they cannot make rules for them, because mostly it was men, and obviously men wouldn't make any rules for them. So they needed to be in the parliament, they needed to have some kind of representation. So they started forming a movement, and that movement was vote for the women, and that is known as suffragettes. So who was the chief campaigner? Emmeline Pankhurst. Okay, so this is the person. Emmeline Pankhurst was born in Manchester in 1858. Okay, so in terms of year, it's not important when somebody was born, but sometimes you will have the question, where was she born? She set up the Women's Franchise League in 1889, who fought to get the vote in the elections for married women. Okay, so the first step was to give vote to the married women. In 1903, she helped to found the Women's Social and Political Union, WSPU. This was the first group whose members were called suffragettes. Okay, so this is the movement for vote for women. The group used civil disobedience in part of the protest and to gain the vote for women. They chained themselves to railings, smashed windows, and committed arson. Many of the women, including Pankhurst, went on hunger strike. In 1918, women over the age of 30 were given voting rights and the right to stand for the parliament party in recognition to the contribution of women made in the effort of tyranny. Okay, anyhow. Shortly before Emmeline Pankhurst's death in 1928, women were given the right to vote at the age of 21, the same as men. This is extremely important. Okay, number one, in 1918, women were given the right to vote for the first time, and only those women were given the right who were 30 years of age. But they still kept on their struggle because they wanted the vote for every woman, not only the women who are 30 years old. And in 1928, every woman who was 21 or above could vote, and at that time it was for the 21 was same for men as well. So in a way, that was equal to men. The future of the empire. Although the British Empire continued to grow until 1920s, there was already discussion in the late 19th century about its future direction. Supporters of expansion believed that the empire benefited Britain through increased trade and commerce. Others thought that the empire had an overexpanded is become overspended, and that the frequent conflicts in many parts of the empire, such as India, northwest frontier, and southern Africa, were a drain on resources. Now that is just a history lesson for you. So now people are thinking whether the empire should continue to grow or whether we should dismantle this. Yet the great majority of the British people believe that the empire is a force of good in the world. So this is what most people believe, that empire is a source of good. The Boer War of 1899 and 1902 made the discussion about the future of the empire even more urgent. Now, in the 1999 and 1902, during these years, there was a war known as the Boer War, and because of that, this discussion of empire should continue to grow or not grow, discussion became more urgent because it saw what good it was doing to the rest of the world. The British went to war in South Africa with the settlers from the Netherlands called the Boers. The Boers fought fiercely, and the war went on for over 3 years. Many died in the fighting, and many more from disease. There was some public sympathy for the Boers, and people began to question whether the empire could continue. Yeah, so because so many Boers were killed, so many Netherlands people were killed, so people were started saying, okay, what's the point of expanding the empire even more, because people are getting killed. As different parts of the empire developed, they won the greater freedom and autonomy from Britain. Eventually, by the second half of the 20th century, there was, for the most part, an orderly transition from the empire to Commonwealth, okay, which countries being granted independence. So towards the end of the second half of the 20th century, they realized that yes, it's better to give independence to countries because countries are growing stronger and developed and they can live on their own. So instead of empire, we would call it a commonwealth, which means that the countries would still be part of the British Empire, but they would be independent in their own. Okay, so it's a kind of friendly group, I would say. Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling was born in India in 1865 and later lived in India, the UK, and the USA. So this guy was born in India, lived in UK and USA. He wrote books and poems set in both India and the UK. His poems and novels reflected the idea that the British Empire was a force for good. So this is what he wrote in his books. Kipling was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1907. So that's important. His books include Just So Stories, the Jungle Book, these two stories. So now you will have a question, who wrote Just So Stories, or who wrote the Jungle Book, or Rudyard Kipling wrote what two books? Okay, and then you will have to choose from 4 options, which continue to be popular today. His poem If has often been voted among the UK's favorite poem. It begins in these words: if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. And that's the whole poem. You could read it in your own time. It's some kind of motivational stuff. So it's one of the favorite poems in the UK. And sometimes you will have the first 2 lines and you will be asked who wrote the poem If, or which poem these verses come from, and then you have to say if, or sometimes the question is who wrote if, or if is written by which poet, and then you will have options for poets. Okay, so it's just the information that you have to remember. Okay, so as always, now you could stop your video here and then look at these questions and try to answer these questions in your notebooks, and then go back and check whether you can answer all of these questions correct or not. So self-mark yourself, and then you will see how much more practice you need. All right, so I wish you all the best, and if you have any question you can ask me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.